14 days before my wedding, my father looked my fiancée in the eyes across a dinner table and said, "He's a liar. Always has been." My mother leaned in a half-second later, her voice dropping to the register she reserves for things she wants to sound like kindness. "Don't let him trap you too, sweetheart. He has a secret child. He's been hiding it for years." I sat at that table and did not move, did not speak, did not flinch. Not because I was frozen, because I already knew what was coming next. And what was coming next was going to end my parents in a way they had not prepared for and could not recover from. My name is Steve Page, 34 years old, founder of ClearPath Health Technologies based in Atlanta's Midtown corridor. I build software for hospital systems. I employ 23 people. I have been working 18-hour days since I was 26 years old to build something from nothing, which is the kind of life that doesn't leave a lot of room for self-pity, and which has the useful side effect of making you very good at sitting still when someone is trying to blow up your world, because you have learned, through practice, that the people who stay calm in a crisis are usually the ones who survive it. My fiancée's name is Rachel Holt, 31 years old, civil litigation attorney at a firm on State Street in Boston. She is precise, methodical, and has the particular patience of a woman who has spent 9 years building cases that take years to resolve. She does not panic. She prepares. When my parents sat down across from us at the rehearsal dinner at the Fairmont Copley Plaza in Boston on March 14, 2026, and delivered their planned detonation, "He has a secret child. Don't let him trap you." Rachel did not raise her voice, did not look at me, did not reach for my hand. She reached into her purse. She took out her phone. She opened the Photos app. She turned the screen to face my parents and asked, in the calm tone of a litigator presenting Exhibit A, "Is this her?" The photograph was of a little girl, 13 years old, with my eyes and her mother's smile, standing in front of a purple bedroom door in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. My mother's face went the color of old paper. My father's jaw worked without producing sound. The room? 42 guests, white linen, the low warm buzz of a celebration in its first hour, went completely and utterly silent. But I should tell you how we got there, because the way we got there is the entire story. I met Rachel 3 years ago in a hospital waiting room in Boston. She was reviewing case notes on a yellow legal pad, the most focused person I had ever seen in a room designed to make people anxious. I asked what she was reading. She said it was confidential. I asked if she was always that direct. She said she was, and that it saved everyone time. We had dinner that Thursday. 8 months later, when Rachel met my parents, she had already noticed things I had spent 30 years not examining. "Your mother calls every Sunday during the time she knows we're together," she said one evening. "She asks about the company financials every call, not out of interest, to assess. She asked me last week whether I had student loans." Rachel set down her fork. "She's building a picture. I had filed those patterns under parental behavior and left them there. Rachel organized them into something else. They're managing something," she said. "I don't know what yet." I told her she was projecting. She gave me the look she gives when she's confident she's right and has decided to let time do the convincing. She was right. She is almost always right. I have learned to lead with that understanding and save us both time. Here is what I did not know until 22 days before my wedding. In the fall of 2011, I was 19 years old and a sophomore at Boston University. I was dating a girl named Cassie Torres, my first serious girlfriend, a semester ahead of me in the communications program. A person of considerable warmth and slightly chaotic energy, who made everything more interesting and occasionally more complicated. We were together for 14 months. We were careful until 1 month we weren't quite careful enough. I did not know this. I never knew this. What I know now is that in December 2012, Cassie discovered she was pregnant. She was frightened, overwhelmed, and made the decision that she needed to tell my parents before she told me, because she had met them twice, found them intimidating, and believed, with the earnest logic of a 19-year-old, that the older people in the situation would know what to do. She called my mother on a Sunday evening. My mother told her, very calmly, that she would handle everything. She told Cassie not to say anything to me. Not yet. Not until they had figured out a plan. She said the words, Steve has a future ahead of him. This doesn't have to derail it. 2 weeks. 3. She called my mother again. My mother told her the timing was still not right, that she was still figuring out the best way to approach Steve, that Cassie should just give it a little more time. 4 weeks after that first phone call, Cassie stopped waiting. She made her own decision. She had the baby, a girl, born in August 2013, healthy, 7 pounds 4 ounces, named Lily. She arranged a closed adoption through a family services agency in Boston. The adoptive parents were Jennifer and Michael Walsh, a couple in Brooklyn. She asked my mother one more time to tell me. My mother said she would. She did not. Cassie left Boston after the adoption was finalized. She moved to Portland, Oregon, started over, and spent 13 years not knowing whether I had ever found out, whether I had chosen, knowing, not to come. She carried that uncertainty for 13 years. I learned all of this on February 20th, 2026, when Rachel sat down across from me at our kitchen table in Atlanta with a printed document and said, "I need you to hear this, and I need you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else." Rachel had found Cassie 4 months earlier. She had not done it to investigate me. She had done it because she was building a case. Not a legal one, but the kind she builds instinctively when she senses someone is managing information around someone she loves. She had started with the Sunday calls, with the financial questions, with the look her mother-in-law-to-be gave her when she described her career in a way that made her too independent, too established, too difficult to manage. She had pulled my old social media from college, not to spy, but to understand the timeline of who I had been before she knew me. She found Cassie Torres in a photo from 2011. She found that Cassie had left Boston abruptly in 2012. She found a birth announcement in a Brooklyn family newsletter, the kind that small community organizations publish. From August 2013. Baby girl. Walsh family. Birth mother. A young woman from Boston. She didn't tell me what she was doing. She hired a private researcher, a woman she had worked with on a custody case, and within 6 weeks had a name, an address, and a telephone number. She called Cassie Torres on a Monday afternoon in October 2025. She introduced herself. She told Cassie she was engaged to Steve Page and that she was trying to understand what had happened. She asked Cassie to tell her the truth. Cassie told her everything. They spoke for 2 hours. Rachel took notes on the legal pad with the same focused quiet I had watched her bring to hospital waiting room case files 3 years earlier. When Cassie was done, Rachel said, "Thank you. He doesn't know. I'm going to tell him, and I'm going to make sure he knows it wasn't your fault." Then she flew to Brooklyn and met the Walsh family. She met Lily, and she asked Jennifer and Michael Walsh if they would be willing to bring Lily to a rehearsal dinner in Boston in March, so that a little girl could meet her biological father at the same table where someone was planning to use her existence as a weapon. Jennifer Walsh said yes. I didn't know yet, when my parents sat down across from us at that table, that Lily Walsh was already in the hotel, 4 floors up, in a room with Jennifer and Michael, waiting. Let me tell you about my parents, because you need to understand what they believed they were doing. My father, Dennis Page, spent 30 years as a cardiologist at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. My mother, Carol, managed the household and their social architecture with the precision of someone who had decided early that the family's public image was a project requiring constant maintenance. They were not cruel people in the broad sense. They were people who had decided that outcomes mattered more than processes, that the family's trajectory was a thing to be managed, and that love expressed itself most reliably through control. When my mother told Cassie not to say anything, when she decided that a 19-year-old girl's pregnancy was a variable to be contained rather than a crisis to be helped, she was not acting from malice. She was acting from the belief that she was the most qualified person in the situation to determine the right outcome for everyone, including the people who hadn't been consulted. That is a particular kind of dangerous. Not the villain you see coming, the one who genuinely believes they're helping while they arrange the walls around you. I had been living inside those walls for 34 years. I had learned to navigate them. What I had not fully understood was how many rooms I hadn't been allowed into. Rachel had understood it faster than I had. She had also understood something I had not thought to ask. If my parents had known about Cassie's pregnancy and buried it, What were they planning to do with that information now? The answer arrived 14 days before the wedding, in the form of a dinner invitation. My parents called on a Monday evening. My mother's voice had the particular sugarcoating she applies when she is about to request something I would not agree to if she asked directly. Your father and I want to have dinner with you and Rachel. Before the wedding. Just the four of us. We have some things we'd like to discuss. Rachel was in the kitchen when the call came in. I put it on speaker. Of course, Rachel said immediately. We'd love that. Saturday? My mother sounded pleased in the way people sound pleased when a plan is going more smoothly than expected. After we hung up, Rachel looked at me across the kitchen island. They're going to do it at the rehearsal dinner, she said. You think they're going to wait until Saturday and do it in private? That's the whole point. They want to do it where I can't walk away quietly, where your friends are watching, where the story gets maximum reach. She picked up her coffee. The Saturday dinner is reconnaissance. They want to see how much I know. And do you want to go? She looked at me with the expression that means the question has already been answered. I've been waiting for this for 4 months, she said. Of course I want to go. We had dinner with my parents on Saturday, March 7th at a restaurant in Buckhead they had chosen. A steakhouse where my father was a regular familiar territory. A room where he had the home advantage. He did not use it well. My mother spent 40 minutes asking Rachel questions that were not questions. They were inventory assessments. How long had Rachel been at the firm? Did she plan to make partner, or was she thinking about family? Had she and Steve discussed having children? His own children, she said, with a smile calibrated to sound like warmth. Rachel answered every single question with the pleasant, non-committal precision of someone who has deposed hundreds of witnesses and knows exactly when a questioner is fishing. My father said almost nothing until the dessert course. Then he looked at Rachel and said, very casually, like a man who has been waiting for the right moment, Has Steve ever talked to you about his past relationships? We've talked about everything that matters, Rachel said. My father nodded slowly. My mother's eyes moved to his, a quick, coordinated glance of the kind that couples develop over decades. They had their answer. She didn't know. They were wrong. The rehearsal dinner was March 14th. 42 guests. The Crystal Room at the Fairmont Copley Plaza on St. James Avenue in Boston. White roses on the tables. Rachel's choice, simple and unshowy. Our closest friends, my colleagues from ClearPath, Rachel's partners and associates from the firm, family from both sides. The kind of room that hums with genuine warmth when the people in it are actually glad to be there. My parents arrived at 7:15. I watched them come in from across the room. My father in a dark suit. My mother in navy, the pearl bracelet she wore to events where she wanted to project the image of a woman who had arrived. They greeted people warmly, moved through the room with the social fluency of two people who had spent decades performing exactly this kind of gathering. They found their seats. Rachel and I were already at the head table. My mother leaned in as soon as the first course was cleared. He's a liar. Always has been. My father, looking directly at Rachel, calm, measured. The opening line of a speech he had rehearsed. Don't let him trap you too, sweetheart. My mother, the whisper. The venom dressed as concern. He has a secret child. He's been hiding it for years. I sat completely still. Rachel did not look at me. She did not react to either of them. She reached into her purse with the same deliberate calm she brings to opening a briefcase in a courtroom. She took out her phone. She opened the Photos app. She found the photograph she had been carrying for 4 months. She turned the screen to face my parents. Is this her? On the screen, Lily Walsh, 13 years old, dark eyes that were unmistakably mine. Standing in front of a purple bedroom door, holding a stuffed rabbit, wearing a yellow sweater, smiling at the camera with the uncomplicated joy of a child who has no idea that her photograph is about to detonate a decade of calculated silence. My mother's face went white. My father's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her name is Lily, Rachel said. Her voice was even, informational. The tone of a lawyer laying out established facts. She's 13 years old. She lives in Brooklyn with her adoptive parents, Jennifer and Michael Walsh. Cassie Torres was 19 when she found out she was pregnant. She called your wife before she called Steve. Your wife told her to wait. She waited. She waited until she had the baby and placed her for adoption. Then, she waited for Steve to contact her. A pause. He never did. Because he never knew. Because you decided that for him. The table adjacent to ours had gone quiet. Then the table behind it. Where did you? My mother started. A researcher I trust, Rachel said, and Cassie Torres, who was very willing to talk. This is not the place. You chose the place, Rachel said simply. I just came prepared. I looked at my parents across that white linen table. In a room full of the people I loved. In a city where my father had introduced me to professional colleagues and family friends for 30 years. In the venue where in 14 days I was going to marry the most remarkable person I had ever known. I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something quieter. The particular clarity of a man who has just seen the full architecture of something for the first time and understands completely where every wall was built and why. I didn't know it yet, but Lily Walsh was 4 floors above us at that exact moment, awake past her bedtime, asking Jennifer Walsh if she could meet him tonight. If you've been listening for a while and want accounts like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you. My father tried to recover. He sat forward in his chair and used the voice he reserved for situations requiring authority. The voice of a man who had spent 30 years delivering difficult diagnoses and had learned that a certain register of calm could make almost anything sound reasonable. We made a decision that we believed was in everyone's best interest. Steve had a future ahead of him. He was 19. A baby would have... You made that decision, I said. Without asking me. It was the first thing I had said since they sat down. My father looked at me, and for the first time in 34 years, I watched him not have an answer ready. You had a daughter, I said. For 13 years, I had a daughter and you decided I didn't need to know. You were a boy. I was 19, not 12, not incompetent. You didn't trust me with information about my own life. I looked at him steadily. That's not protection, Dad. That's control. The room was very quiet now, not the hushed attention of people politely listening. The full, still silence of 42 people who have stopped pretending not to hear. My mother reached across the table. Steve, please, not here. You chose here, I said. It was the second time one of us had said that to them, and the repetition landed with the weight of the truth it was. The door at the far end of the crystal room opened. Jennifer Walsh walked in first. A composed woman in her early 40s, her hand held by a small girl in a white dress with a purple sash. Lily, 13 years old, dark eyes moving around the room with the careful alertness of a child entering an unfamiliar space. Rachel had texted Jennifer at some point during the conversation. I had not seen her do it. She had done it the way she did most things, precisely, without announcement, at exactly the right moment. The room's silence deepened into something different. Not shock exactly, recognition. 42 people understanding, simultaneously what they were looking at. Lily walked toward the head table. Her eyes found my face and stayed there. I do not know what she saw. I know what I felt, something that does not have a clean name. Something between recognition and grief and a joy so complicated it felt like it needed more space than a person's chest has. She stopped in front of me. Looked up. Are you Steve? She asked. Yeah, I said. I am. I'm Lily. A pause. I think you might be my dad. My mother made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. The particular register of a woman who has just watched the thing she buried walk into a room in a white dress and introduce herself. I heard you didn't know about me, Lily said, still looking at me. Jennifer told me. She said it wasn't your fault. I could not speak for a moment. Rachel's hand found my arm under the table. It wasn't, I managed. I stopped, started again. I would have wanted to know. I want you to know that. Lily considered this with the seriousness of a 13-year-old processing information that matters. Okay, she said. Then, turning to look at my mother with the calm directness of a child who has not yet learned to perform anything other than honesty. Are you his mom? My mother stared at her. Yes, she said, barely audible. Did you know about me? The room waited. My mother's lips moved. No sound came out. It's okay if you did, Lily said. Jennifer says people do hard things sometimes because they're scared, not because they're bad. She looked at my mother with more generosity than my mother had earned or deserved. Were you scared? My mother put her hand over her mouth. My father beside her looked at the table. Rachel's colleague from the firm, a woman named Dana who had known Rachel for 7 years, stood up from a table nearby. Steve, she said, I think everyone in this room wants you to know that we're here for you, whatever comes next. Someone else followed. A colleague from ClearPath. Then, Rachel's best friend from law school. One by one, the room reassembled itself around a different center. Not my parents' narrative, not the story they had come to deliver, but the one that had just walked in through the door in a white dress with a purple sash. My father stood. He took my mother's arm. She did not resist. At the door, my mother stopped. She turned. For a moment, I thought she was going to say something worth hearing. You'll regret this, Steve. All of you. The door swung shut behind them. The room exhaled. Then someone began to clap. Then everyone. Not for the departure, for Lily, who stood at the head table looking mildly confused by the noise. Why are they clapping? She asked Jennifer, who had moved to stand beside her. Because you were very brave, Jennifer said. Lily seemed to accept this. She looked at the dessert cart near the far wall with the focused interest of an 13-year-old who has completed a significant task and is ready to move on to something enjoyable. Rachel leaned close to my ear. She asked to meet you tonight. 4 hours ago. Jennifer said she'd been asking all week. I looked at Lily, this person who had existed for 13 years without my knowing, who had walked into a room full of strangers with the steadiness of someone who had been prepared for something hard and had decided to face it anyway. She had my eyes. I had not been ready for that. Hi again, I said. She looked up from the dessert cart. Do you like chocolate cake? Yes, I said. Me too, she said. That's probably genetic. I laughed for the first time all evening. We married on March 28, 2026, at Old South Church on Boylston Street in Boston. 106 guests. My parents were not among them. Jennifer and Michael Walsh were seated in the third row on Rachel's side. Lily was the flower girl. White dress, purple flowers, the particular dignity of a child who takes a job seriously. When she walked down the aisle ahead of Rachel, Ben, our officiant, a friend from my BU days who had become a minister, paused the processional for a moment so the room could take it in. Several people cried. The photographer later told us it was the shot of the day. Our vows included a line we had written together. I promise to always choose truth over comfort and presence over convenience. The reception was at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, the same building where, 14 days earlier, my parents had tried to use my daughter's existence as a weapon. We reclaimed the room. It felt right to do it that way. Lily asked if she could join our first dance. We pulled her onto the floor between us. The three of us held hands and turned in a slow circle, while the room watched and the photographer caught the moment from 3 angles. Jennifer Walsh told me afterward that Lily had talked about that dance for the entire drive back to Brooklyn. 1 week after the wedding, I sent my parents a letter, printed, signed, mailed, certified with return receipt requested. It was brief. You knew about Lily for 13 years. You knew about Cassie for 13 years. You made those decisions without me. You tried to use what you knew to destroy my marriage rather than to give me back something you had taken. I will not be in contact with you. You are not welcome in my life, in my marriage, or in Lily's life unless she one day chooses differently as an adult. That is her right. It is not yours. Steve. I received the return receipt confirmation 3 days later. I filed it in the folder I have kept since February, where I keep everything that matters in a form I can return to. I did not hear from them. Here is what I know now. I know that the people who control information in families do it because information is power, and the loss of information control is the loss of a certain kind of influence. My parents did not bury Cassie's pregnancy because they hated me. They buried it because a 19-year-old with a child was a variable they could not manage toward the outcome they wanted. They made the calculation that the family's trajectory was more important than my right to know I had become a father. That calculation was wrong, not because it didn't produce the outcome they wanted. It did, for 13 years. It was wrong because the people whose lives they managed around that decision, Cassie, Lily, and me, paid the cost of it without being consulted. I also know this. Rachel spent 6 months building a case that she never had to argue in court. She found a child. She found her mother. She flew to Brooklyn and introduced herself to strangers and asked them to trust her with something irreplaceable. She did all of it because she had decided 8 months into knowing me that I deserved the truth. Even if the truth was complicated, even if the truth changed everything, even if the truth meant that the man she was planning to marry had a daughter he didn't know about. She never once considered that a reason to leave. She considered it a reason to act. That is the person I married. That is what I get to build a life with. Lily lives in Brooklyn with Jennifer and Michael. That is her home, her school, her primary family. She stays with us Wednesday evenings for dinner. Every other weekend we are in family therapy together. Me, Rachel, Jennifer, Michael, and Lily. It is working. She has a bedroom at our apartment in Atlanta now. Purple, her requirement. She chose the shade herself from a paint strip at Home Depot with the gravity of someone making an important architectural decision. She called me Dad Steve for the first time in June. Unprompted, in the middle of asking me to pass the butter at dinner. I passed the butter. She spread it on her toast. We kept talking, but I thought about 13 years of not knowing. About a photograph carried in a lawyer's phone for 4 months, about a little girl in a white dress who walked into a room full of strangers and told the truth with the calm of someone twice her age. Some things take the time they take, and some things, when they finally arrive, are exactly what they were always supposed to be. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.